Hi. Yeah, thanks, Eric, for inviting me to this talk. And so, quick introduction. I'm Suikia. Just call me SK. Will do. And my GitHub username, if that's a thing with everyone, is Green Tea Frat. So today, just a quick introduction first. That's me. And then I started out actually in my first year of undergrad. I was a professional makeup artist. I did a diploma in makeup artistry, and I think that paved the way for a lot of like the artistic and design stuff that I eventually did. I actually did my undergrad in engineering science, which is like in solar cell research, and then I picked up programming after my undergrad, and then. Followed by two very impressive credentials. You see that? I'm just putting that there so that I can walk around in slippers without people thinking that I'm just here to stir shit. But yes, MSCS at Stanford when I did like AI, graduated from that I think 2 years ago. Then I went to join Google in Singapore as a privacy engineer working in the Google payments team. And then I left Google after about a year to start my own company. My co-founder Alfred, who couldn't make it here today, he's having a new baby, so congrats to him. But eventually, actually, this year we started this company called Pebly in January, and a bit about that. What we do at Pebly is we automatically generate really nice product photos. So what you see here is an input that people can provide, and then all the images you see on the right side are the images that were created via the algorithm that we're using. So we train a custom model on product photography. The underlying foundation for that is Stable Diffusion. If you're, most of you should be familiar with that. We launched this in January this year. Luckily, at like just before the peak of all the AI image and ChatGPT hype, and we recently crossed 1 million signups about I think 3 to 4 weeks ago. So doing relatively well, but also like with that we kind of want to also dabble into a lot of other stuff. So for today's talk, it's about something that Alfred and I have always been talking about, which is could there be more interesting interfaces for generative art beyond a lot of the text to image stuff that we see today? So let me go into that. Oh, is it frozen? Okay. Okay, so what you see here is Midjourney. Like, has anyone not tried Midjourney? Okay. Oh, okay. That's kind of sad. I mean, is it still free? Actually, I don't think so, right? I mean, okay. I see the disappointed faces. Uh, but but basically, what you do with Midjourney is you type slash imagine, and then you type like this string of words, and then you generate like this really nice images that you see on the right. And the reason why like the UI evolved this way was because uh, when this technology was first developed, it was trained on it's essentially trained to generate images from text. But if you think about it as an artist or just like anyone who's doing like graphic design, it is an extremely unintuitive way to handle images, right? Like you can only describe in very coarse form what you want to see, and imagine like for somebody who's coming in from like Photoshop, this is like totally unintuitive. You're losing a lot of control there. What if I want like a surfer to be on the right side of the image? I want the left side to be blank so that I can have some copy later on. This is something that I can't describe in Midjourney, and the that led us thinking about like what are alternative like interfaces. So I'm just gonna go over like some interesting ones. There has been open source or not, with for people to use generative art. So this is known as Automatic 1111. Anyone who's tried this before? No? Yes? Yes. Okay, so cool. This basically is the, I guess, hacker's version of Midjourney. Essentially, you can run this on your own local setup with your computer. If you don't have a GPU, then really slowly. And it exposes all the different settings that you can have, the width of the image, size of the image, the random seed that you're setting, and the sampling method, whether it's Euler A or DPM++ or whatever, and the sampling steps. And you can see all of these, they make for an overwhelming experience that probably wouldn't go well with a lot of the consumers or lay people out there today. But this is one that has been very popular. Another interesting one is called Comfy UI. So who's tried Comfy UI? This one is really interesting. I actually tried, after trying it, I really like this one. So to understand this, rather using this actually helps you understand how Stable Diffusion works. So it breaks the model down into different components. And what it does is it allows you to then link the different components together via like these lines. And then that also means you can swap out the components. And there's a huge open source community that where you can download like a lot of these different components and workflows, and then you just hit like again Q prompt, and then it generates an image just like Midjourney, except that now you have a lot of control over the types of models that you want and things like that. And again, this is open source, and it's actually, I believe, maintained by somebody who's on a Stability AI team, basically the company that released Stable Diffusion. Okay, so we've been speaking a lot about like UIs that are not very intuitive. But for myself, I am somebody who I guess like to make things simple for most people. Like I want my mom to be able to use the things that I'm building. And with the previous two interfaces, it's kind of like tough to have my mom use that. With Stable Diffusion, one of the interesting recent developments is this thing called ControlNet. Can I just have a show of hands who's familiar with ControlNet? Yes. Okay, it's kind of nice because most people don't know. So that calibrates sort of the amount of technical, the level of technicality I should go into. Basically, what you see here is the Stable Diffusion model can take in addition to your text prompt, an additional image that is used to condition the final result. So here you can have like a really shitty sketch of a tortoise, and it generates a tortoise. You can have a stick figure where you can position like every joint, and the model actually generates an image based on that. You can have what we call like a depth image. So this shows like the depth of the photograph that you want to generate, where the lighter colors represent pixels that are nearer to the viewer, and darker regions represent pixels further away. And this is sort of similar to the sketch, but it's more like straight lines. And you can imagine with this, like, what if with this we can do a lot more than just supplying a text prompt to the AI model, right? Now we can do something similar to like if I just want a rough sketch of where the tortoise should be on the image, I just sketch that, and then I get the image, the models to generate the rest of that. This enables what we feel is a lot more intuitive workflow to working with generative art. And finally, we have generative fill, which is, I guess, the something that I'm supposed to share about how we built it. Are we all familiar with generative fill? This is something that Adobe Photoshop released. In this case, this example is one that was quite big on the website I just pulled from. You are actually selecting the background here, and then you type white, wet, alley at night, and then it actually fills in the region that you have selected with your prompt. And again, I think this is something that is a lot more intuitive with people. It gives people a lot more visual control as opposed to just typing like a deer with like in a wet alley at night. You can get a deer appearing anywhere, but now you get like exact control over where this deer should be. And then you can even like just highlight like a region here and say something like fire hydrant, and it'll just appear there. So this new kind of UI gives people a lot more control compared to just text to image that we've seen with Midjourney. So I'm just going to share a little bit about building generative fill, because we are actually doing that as part of a new app that we're releasing. And it was kind of fun to kind of do that. And I wouldn't go too deep into the technical parts, but if anyone is interested in like the full like deep details, just feel free to contact me after the talk. So the thing we start off with is this thing called inpainting. So with Stable Diffusion, other than just generating an image from a text input, what you can also do is you provide a source image, a mask, and also a prompt. Then what happens is you get the same source image, but then at the part where you have masked out, the model would then generate a new thing in the part that you have masked out. So basically, that does a lot of the hard work, as you can imagine, with generative fill. Then all we need to do is like provide a sort of the UI to communicate that. So on the front end, we basically used a HTML canvas library. So for those who are familiar, there's fabric.js or convert.js. I think both of them have like React sort of components. If anyone is a React fan, I'm personally a Vue fan, and neither of these have Vue components. That's unfortunate. Then anyway, the next thing is after we use like this canvas library to sort of show the canvas, we let the user input the mask. Essentially, what we're actually doing on the front end is the user would draw with like this brush, and for people who are familiar with HTML canvas, you're essentially drawing paths with like coordinates and everything. Okay, that's getting a little bit too technical, but essentially we get the paths and we export the paths as like a PNG file. And because it's a PNG, there's transparency, right? So the parts that are not drawn is essentially transparent. And then we just take that as the mask and we send it to the back end for inpainting. So we actually, just a small detail, we actually have the user draw on a separate layer so that drawing and erasing doesn't affect the image. It gets a little bit more complicated than that because we want the user to be able to move the image as well. So we need to detect when the user is like drawing the mask and when the user is actually moving the underlying image. But I'm not going to go into that because that's just super complicated. But with this, we essentially have a way for the user to input the type of mask that they want to pass in. And then we're done, right? I mean, basically, we have we pass that to the inpaint algorithm, and then we get the final image that we want. So that's not exactly the case. Oh, does it show up here? Okay, so you can't really tell, but this image here has a problem. So the problem is that the part that is inpainted is very subtle here, but believe me when I say that graphic designers can be a pain in the ass about this. So the part that is inpainted actually is slightly different in color from the rest of the image. Any guesses as to why this is happening? Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. That's somewhat close. Okay, let me just go back to this. So this is the one that I showed initially, and it doesn't have the square. Okay, so maybe watch out for this line here at the top. So this is the image that I showed earlier. Now this is the new image. Do we see the line? do we see it? Like, whoa, I hear some, oh. Okay, do we sort of see it? It's here. It's like there's this straight line here, and then here, and it goes up. It's very, trust me, it's very obvious on the screen. But basically, I think you sort of got the idea, right? Yes. Yes. Yes, it's not obvious on the projection, but you can tell on the screen. But what is actually happening is that the algorithm, it does a great job in like generating and matching the overall like stuff, right? But there's a slight like hue and discoloration that happens with the algorithm, and this is actually quite hard to fix on the AI side. So which means that we have to think of some like funky workarounds to solve this. So here is the source image. Here is what is generated. And the problem is that the source image and the generated image, they don't match exactly. What happens when we want to send the output, the resulting output to the user, we actually paste the source image, the unmasked part, back onto the generated thing. So this is source pasted on generated. The square part is from the generated thing. The rest of the image is from the source. Okay, so we see this like square thing. Now the obvious question is, why the hell do we want to do this? Like, why don't we just send the generated image over, right? Yes, yes. Okay. So the problem is that for graphic designers who are really concerned about like their image, the color needs to be exact. So let's say this is like, I don't know, like FF0023. And then this is FF0013. They will know when you send them this instead of this. Trust me on that. I mean, we have users to know this. So they will know. Okay, so that's reason one. Now the second reason is with generative AI, for now, we can't generate like super well. So if you had a cup, I mean, with like shoes and things like that, it looks generally decent. But if you had like a cup with like words or like a T-shirt with like the words that I have here, it's not going to replicate that in a generated image. It's just going to be blobs. So if you send the generated image over, it's going to be super obvious that it's different. So when we're thinking about the workaround, the thing is we have to paste the source onto the generated thing, onto the generated image, so that the final result matches what the user is expecting as much as possible. Okay, any ideas? So there's this square. How do we remove that? Yes. Okay. So you're saying we crop out like this part, and then we paste it here. Yeah. Oh, you mean like detect the balloon? Oh, okay. That's an interesting idea. So we detect the balloon and then we just paste it in, right? I mean that kind of works, but what if it's like more complicated, right? What if it's not just a balloon? What if it's like a whole like gradient, like they want like a rainbow and a rainbow blends in and things like that? Yes. Okay. So that's close. So essentially, we want to figure out what's the difference between this and this, and hopefully the difference is applies to this like region that changed, right? The problem with that is that when you're computing the difference, the part where the balloon is going to be huge, and then it wouldn't really work because if you want to paste that back in, it will just turn the balloon into the wall. When you apply the subtraction, yeah. Okay, because we don't have much time, we're just gonna go straight to the solution. So this is I want to say that I came up with this, but no, I saw a GitHub issue. Somebody commented this solution, and I thought this is ingenious. So essentially, we use basically RGB histograms. We look at that. We examine the pixel values between this and the generated image in the unmasked area, and we compute a lookup table. What that means for the non-graphic design is that for every pixel value, RGB here, we compute, for every RGB here, pixel here, we compute a mapping to a pixel value here. So this white will have, we want it to be this white, right? So in the part that is like here, the white should also be this white. Does that make sense? Those who don't understand, shake your head. No, okay, you do not understand. Okay, let's do it just for that one person who didn't understand what I was saying. Basically, we know that so we don't know what's going to be generated, so we can't use that for comparison. But we know that in the black area, the pixel values should be identical, but they're not. I can hear my echoes from somewhere. Okay, but they're not. But we know that, okay, so let's say this is pixel RGB value like A. Like let's say in at this spot, my RGB value is like FF, right? But here we get like FFFFAA. What I'm gonna say is that every time I see an FFFF here, I'm going to turn it into FFFFAA. Does that make sense? Even for the part where there's the balloon, right? So, I mean, that's the simple way of saying it. So for every pixel value, we're going to compute like a mapping to the correct pixel value here. And that kind of works, right? So okay, I mean, it kind of spoils the effect because you can't see it. Can you actually see? There's a difference, right? Yeah, so this is the result. And I swear that this is not the generated image. This is a composite. And this actually solves the problem that we are seeing. Yes.
What about the
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do. So what we do is, okay, just any thoughts? If this was your problem, what would you come up with? Yes. So essentially what we do is, instead of just like pasting the thing directly, right, we kind of do a blend at the edge of the image. And that kind of helps to reduce some of the artifacts that you're seeing from the blurring and things like that. Yeah. There's actually a problem with this method. Anyone can identify that? Okay, the problem is we are assuming that for every pixel value here, we compute a lookup. But what if actually is the kind of evidence is in the unmasked area, right? What if there is no yellow that is this like shade? Or what if in the unmasked area there's just one color? It's like a single like red, like let's say it's pure red. And then you get like a lookup table with like one value. It maps from this red to like this other red, but nothing else, because you have nothing else to compare with. Right? I mean, do you understand the problem? Yes? Anyone has thoughts about that? Solutions? Yes, that's sort of what we're doing with the I mean that would help. But in the extreme case where you have very, very few values, then it sort of collapses, because you might have like a full red background, and then in your in-painted you have like a yellow balloon. And there's absolutely no reference for a non-red pixel. Instead of threshold. Okay, and what if it fails? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. I kind of get what you mean. It might work. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what we did. Basically, we did what Shen is my friend from college. Basically, we did what he said. That basically we compute. Basically, we just count what the size of the lookup table, and if it's too small, we just don't do the change. We just paste it, and we say screw it. We can't do anything better than this. Yeah, but maybe that will work. I might just try that. Yeah, but sometimes it do. Yes.
how do you determine the logic for the lookup table? Like, how do you determine that it's white?
Oh, by the pixel position. So for at least for let's say for this, right? We know that this and this needs to be exactly the same. So pixel values that exist here, a pixel that I don't know, like a white that is here needs to map to this white, right? So if this white appears here again, I'll just map it to this white. Yeah. Okay, but anyway, yes, our workaround for the second problem was not a workaround; it's just giving up. So let me know if anyone has any interesting ideas. But essentially, that is just like a glimpse to the problems we are solving when we are building like generative fill. Photoshop actually does a really impressive job with this. There are some issues with like the images in Photoshop that when they're generated, the subject isn't in the image, but Okay, I'm going too deep into that, but I'm just very impressed with how they do it. I'm pretty sure they're not doing what we're doing, because we are seeing a few edge failure cases still when we're using this. Okay, I'm gonna just go into like other interesting ways to around like generative art. So in the app that we've created, we're also implementing this thing we call magic assets. So I think when we're thinking about generative art and building apps around that, right? It's just interesting to think about like what are all the different workflows and different things we can combine to make useful things for our users. So with magic assets, essentially what you're doing is it's kind of like an unlimited stock asset library. So we can keep generating like more stock asset images. And what we're doing on the back end here is after we've generated it, we add some like tuning to make sure that the image is always generated on a white background. We do background removal. We can actually get a transparent background like stock here. And in addition to that, we let people like just draw like a doodle, like a shape that they kind of want their stock image to be in. And we would generate stock images that are in this shape according to this prompt. So this is one. The other interesting thing is we have this thing called Magic Pose, where you could just have this stick figure that you can actually rotate. We built like a really simple like 3D thing here, and you can move like the points around, and you generate different poses of different people. Yeah, so this is like some of the use cases that we've had. And this is also with Stable Diffusion, you can pass like different prompts and do image to image. So starting from a source image can then generate like a whole bunch of different images. The question is, what would be like the ideal UI for this? With I think Mid-Journey, there's still not to this extent. You can kind of provide like a source image, but then the resulting image is very different. This is something that we were working on internally. So we're given like a source image, we can create like things that are inspired by this source image. So the AI takes this and then tries to understand what the style of this, and then given a prompt like frog, then we generate all of these images. The GitHub repo is here. I think the slides will probably be shared with everyone. This is our GitHub repo. Similar one, but with Makoto Shinkai's Your Name. And then we're generating frog in Your Name style. This one is interesting. I think everyone has seen this, right? Like the code generator, this actually scans. If anyone wants to try it, I think it points to a QR code generator, whoever created this. But this is super nice. So what it essentially does is, remember the control net stuff that we were showing where you can take in like a pose and then the image, the generator will generate something similar. This takes in basically a black and white image, and then it tries to follow the hues in that generated image. So this uses the same idea, but instead of a QR code, we just use spirals. Now the next one is a cool extension of this. So this is Nike. Then this is Never Gonna Give You Up. This can you see this one? I think only the people at the back could probably see it clearer. It's essentially the obey thing. This went to like 1.8K upvotes on Reddit in Stable Diffusion, so that's why I thought I had to post it. But yeah, so basically it's essentially the same thing as what you saw previously, but then we extend that to like all sorts of different images. And people were saying that, you know, this is what marketing agencies and ads brands are gonna want to do next time to kind of like inception you into buying this stuff. Then, you know, the newest thing that we're actually also building, so you can access this at vispan.com. I'm getting some RAM issues with my server, so it might not work. But give it a try. All of this are actually videos that are generated with a pipeline that we've built. So they're actually a lot clearer on the website. I just have to zoom, sort of shrink it for the slides. But we're reaching a stage where we can actually generate like full-on videos with AI, and all of this just comes from text. So this was like, you know, tiger prowling in the jungle, old man crying, knight in armor walking in a wet market. The question is, what should the UI for this be, right? Like, are we gonna do text to video like Mid-Journey, or are we gonna do something more interesting? Because with the video generation pipeline, we can impose control net on different parts of the video in different frames. We can change the strength of the control we want to apply at different steps of the video. So there's all sorts of funky things we can do. And I think it's just interesting. I think we're at the cusp of something like really interesting where we have all these like cool technologies that are coming out, and just interested to build cool UIs for all of this. So visbound.com is still text to video because I was a bit lazy to build anything sophisticated. It's taken me a lot of time, trust me, to get this far. But yeah, I think this is just like a glimpse of what's next that we're building. Okay, I think that's all for my talk. I hope I'm not over time. Am I over time? No. Okay. Great. Any Eric, should we go questions? Any questions? Yes. Yes. So actually, let's see. I think 2 weeks ago, the authors behind Animate Diff. So it's basically Animate, then DIFF. It's like this new paper that was published several months ago. So the authors of Animate Diff released a new version of their model that was trained on a higher resolution and up to 16 frames. So we can finally generate videos with 16 frames. Internally, we found a workaround to extend this to unlimited frames. We're still thinking about whether to release that. Let's see. But the algorithm you're looking for is Animate Diff. So you can find that. You can run that with Comfy UI as well. So yeah. Yes. Right. So you mean the balloon problem? What do you mean by the context? Yes. Oh, so we assume that is the input image that the user provides. So the user comes in with just, I was going to lie down and put my feet up, but the user comes in with just that image without a balloon, right? And then they're saying, okay, I would erase this part and I want the AI to add a balloon in there.
Can you please repeat the question?
So in Stable Diffusion, just look for what they call the in-paint model. Yeah. Any other questions? Let me know if video works for visbound.com. But I only have 3 servers, so if everyone tries at once, it's gonna die. Yes. It costs me a lot of money to be running 3 GPU servers, but yeah. Yes. So we actually have so we're actually using just to read it up sort of for the sake of the Zoom audience, I guess. The question was with the previous project, which was Paddly, the product photography one, what scaling or what architecture we're using. So we kind of didn't expect it to blow up. So initially, I'll just sort of talk about like the journey, right? So initially, we had a single EC2 instance, and we thought that this is just like some project that would die off. So it's a single EC2 instance. It's a G5 instance for anyone who wants to run AI workloads. It's a really cost-efficient one. It costs 60 cents per hour, less if you buy reserved instances. But we had one, and then I think after like 3 weeks, it died. For like a good 6 hours while we were asleep, and then we were like shit. And then so I woke up to like a text message from my co-founder saying that the servers were down. So essentially, yes, we moved to auto scaling, but it's auto scaling based on EC2. We have like a launch template if you're familiar with that, and then it scales. Okay, wait. Let me just I have a funny story I'll tell, but before I get there. Does that answer the question? Basically, we have auto scaling with EC2 for AWS. Okay, the funny story is that we had the EC2 instances, and then they were running off Docker images, right? So each Docker image has just all the code to generate the product photos. And we set, and I thought I was like being really smart when I set Docker to be like, I had like a queue. So basically, whenever somebody pings the API for request, the request gets put on the queue. And then I have a cluster of GPUs that would take something off the queue and then process that. But in addition to that, like what if my GPU dies in the middle of processing something? I kind of want the task to still be completed, right? So I thought I was really smart and included some code to put the task back into the queue if it fails. So what happened one day was that somebody, one of our API users, supplied a really large image that essentially out of memories like my script. So imagine I'm like GPU1 and I receive this task, right? And I'm like, shit, this is like huge. And then I die. And what happens when I die? This task goes back to the queue. And then I proceed to have like the next GPU take this task and saying like, why didn't our previous GPU complete it? Let me try it. And then he tries it and he dies as well. And then this basically kills my whole like cluster. And I started out with like a cluster of 10 GPUs. And when I woke up, I was like, whoa, we're seeing lots of traction here. We're getting like auto scaling up to like 30 GPUs. This is gonna wreck me up a lot in terms of AWS costs, but we're gonna see a lot of profits, right? And I go in and I realized that all 30 GPUs, 30 was the max, I put a cap. All 30 GPUs were down and they're not doing anything. They're basically like just like costing me money without doing anything at all. And yeah, so that's lesson learned. Test before deploying. Yeah, I mean that's all. Any other questions? Yes. So now we just throw it back to you. If you supply a wrong size. Yeah. Anything else? No. Okay.
There is like. Okay. Thanks a lot. Yes. So there are quite a number of questions online. I mean, would ask before the sign up. Yes, we can take some time and chat about it when we have time. Okay. So thank you once again, SK, for a great insights about the product and generative field. And I guess let's welcome the second talk of today, which is responsive web design tool.
Just say that left meeting or something. But I don't see it. I don't see a meeting. Was inside and I didn't click any button. Try it.
Check. Sorry, I just a technical issue. Okay. I was like very confusing. My wife.
You want to share just
Working? How do I?
able to connect.
Yes, I can. No. Can I go back? Right. Thanks everyone. Welcome. First question, anyone doing web still today, like writing HTML, CSS? Because it's not about generative AI, it's not a cool stuff. I mean, we've been through like, oh no, like all the cool stuff ever, but then now we're back to the normal. So I think that's me 2 years ago when I was doing a talk online. There's Eric, there's Joey, and there's like 5 people of us on the Zoom call. So it's very different from the scale like today. It was like, I know, 80 people. So glad to be back. I think 2 years ago, like Eric said, the talk was sucked. So hope it's gonna be better today. Anyway, talk about the web, and we all know that, or if you don't know, I hope you know it today. It started in like the 89, 91 time from a guy named Tim Berners-Lee. He was written a proposal about information system, like just sharing documentation, essentially. This paper is still online, and there's a lot of stuff was not kind of relevant, but there's something saying that there's a concept of client browser program that run on the many platforms. So it's very similar to what we have today. Like we have Chrome, we have Safari, run on Mac OS and Windows, different platform. Fast forward for a few years, then we start to get a few official browser. So IE 1.0 was released on 95, was become kind of popularized because it's come with Windows for sure, but it's not the first one. You know, there's Netscape, and then later on Netscape decided to do a refactoring, and then EA just like over. So don't do a huge refactoring, important. A few years, right? Early on, when we had HTML, we just do HTML table for most of the thing for layout. So you can see on the screen, it is table is using to build the whole website. Next one, kind of the whole website. But that back in the day, very simple. So it was 90 something, still HTML table. Fast forward a few years, you have Flash, which essentially saying the whole website is animated video clip. You click a link, it is gonna open you a, I don't know, like a scene or something. So it's not really a text that you can select on the UI. So it was long ago. But all of this history, it's just fast forward a few years, we have 2000 in Singapore. SingPass was very early. I didn't expect that to happen in 2003. Really that early. And domain edge was available like 20 years ago. I thought it should be before that, but it wasn't. So yeah, that's Singapore. I was not there. I was not in Singapore at that time. I just looked it up online. But I think the important part is shifting when we get certain kind of mobile browsing happening. When you have suddenly small devices on your phone that can open and browse any website. Before that, you need to sit home with the big personal computer, but then now you had a mobile browsing capability. But then because the phone is quite small and it's like 8 megabyte of RAM, maybe smaller, so it could do much. And the script audio as well. So that usually leads to a lack of capability from desktop version. That's why you see that in the early day, there's like m.facebook.com designed specifically for mobile. Now it's still live, yeah. I tried it this morning. I just put it in the slides this morning. m.youtube.com still there. It's not dead yet, which means that there's certain people still using it today. But I think the moment when responsive web and mobile web was having a breakthrough was like when the iPhone was like introduced in 2007, because the iPhone is smooth, and then Safari, as Steve Jobs was mentioning, it offering the desktop-like browsing experience. So even you have prepared the mobile website, it still requests the desktop version. And whether you want to do it or not, whether you wanted to unify the experience or not, you have to do it because now the browser is going to request for desktop version. And one important thing is like, you see it on Safari when the guy needs to zoom in and zoom out, it doesn't look that nice, right? It's okay. It has the desktop thing, but it is not that nice. So it's very crucial to have something that can unify the experience on mobile. And so in 2010, there's a groundbreaking article called responsive web design. That is a term. That's where the term responsive web design comes from. Before that, we don't call it responsive web design. It's just web, I think so. I was not there at that time. I was not writing code HTML at that time. But before that article from Ethan, 2010, this article still online. If you can read it, just outlining the three fundamental thing, which is fluid grid, which the container is flexible. There is flexible image. We can scaling based on the screen sizes. And the last one is mentioning the use of CSS media query. So in 2010, CSS media query was pretty new. It's not like all over the place like we have now. So from that moment in time, you can see there's a line. It's like 2010 here. Responsive web design. Then we have Flexbox and media query in 2012. And then 2017, there's CSS grid. And then in the next few slides, we are just keep talking about from 2010 to 2017. We are not really talking about something new yet. So now, right, when think about responsive web, how do you think about it? I think it's like, for me, just first thing ever was like, something needs to look good on both desktop and mobile. So it's like on desktop, it's like there's a hero, as you can see. On mobile, there's a title and the image is breakdown. Then there's a card. And then on mobile, it's gonna be stacked on top of each other, right? It's pretty simple. And then we do all of that with media query, as you can see on top, media mark width. And we use it for most of the thing, I would say. When we need to do anything on the project, we just use media query most of the time. So hopefully we can, touch a little bit on, responsive to content, to the viewport, to the container, and to the user preference. That's the fourth thing I wanted to talk about today. So before talking about responsive web design, that's myself. I built some project with Angular, open source project. Anyone still do Angular? No. One. I didn't expect that yet. It's tough. I don't do Angular anymore. I do Next.js now, so I can't understand the reason. I also organize a few community groups. So I organize Angular Singapore. It's still, because I don't have to talk about it. Then we also have Angular Vietnam, and we have Vietnam. Then I speak at conference sometimes. So if you've never been to a conference and never speak at a conference and want to do that, then look for me after the talk. There's something I can share with you guys. And I work with Ascenda. We do loyalty. If you know about Caligo, it's just Ascenda. Yeah, someone I just talked to use Caligo, so that's why it's very important. Anyway, we go to the first topic: responsive to the content. And so that's how I think of it. Responsive to the content is basically when you write code, it's gonna be adapt to different content sizes. Because when you think about it, when you see the design from the designer, they can put something quite short. But then in reality, this could be really long. So what we need to be prepared is like writing code in a way that it can be adaptable when the content size is long, essentially speaking. So I take the example here that let's it article. Thing render in one row, but when it's like let's it article in text and there's no enough space for the view all button, then we just break it down to the next row, essentially. So we use something simple, like graph. Let's start with something simple. Can you see it from the back? Right. That's just the project that I built with Angular. So there's just the one I show, like desktop album and then modern moment, and it's just the title. The code look like that. There's a div inside the history, and there's a link. There's a tag. Pretty simple. And we use flex and justify content to make it fall apart, right? So when there's the tag is a bit longer, like based on your listing history, and it just start to break it down. And with simple, we use Oh, so it's slow online. Flag wrap, right? To say that when the header is too long, it cannot accommodate the two element, two flag item. Then you break it down. It's pretty simple. So that is the first thing I think we use it most of the day, most of the time. So we to talk about. But before flag and grab is there, it's pretty tricky to do the same thing. So there seems to be position absolute, there's float right, there's display table, and you put a display table cell. So only flag grab kind of do what we want. Yeah. So even something simple like that is it takes time before. I just wanted to emphasize it. But flag grab itself doesn't really like a game changer when we did a repair with flag basis. Flag basis is essentially like I don't think you use it a lot. It's like width, but you don't really set flag basis. I would say so. You do flag grow, flag shrink, but you don't flag basis really. So flag basis is like you saying, okay, the ideal size, it could be a height or the width of an element is this much. That's an ideal. That is in the best case scenario. But because you put flag shrink and grow, so it might not be the same number. It could be bigger, smaller. And in this use case, I can build a form that is very responsive using only flag. Like it just flag really. I can show you again. Like it starts from the same row, and then you shrink it. The button is gonna go down. You shrink it a little bit further. The button and the email is gonna go down. See it? Yeah. Shrink it a little bit further, then the email and the submit button is gonna go down. I just wanted to see it. And then the last one is like the three things in separated row. So all of that, I mean, I thought it's gonna be like some magic with media query, but essentially just display flag and flag wrap the same thing that we do just now. But the more important is like you need to put a flag below, like I'm not sure it's like clear, but there's a number here that's representing flag basis. So I just say, okay, the mail queue, I would say 160, email is 220, and then the button is like 8. It's just an arbitrary number. And then the way to calculate, when it's gonna break is like very simple, right? 160, 220, 80, and then between the two, there's like between the three elements, for sure there's two gaps. So you time it with the gap and you plug them all together, and suddenly you got a number. It's like 492 is the ideal number. Can render three things. But if it goes below that, then it's gonna break the button because the two text box we still can accommodate within this 401 pixel. Below 402, 492. Sorry, I was not good with number. But yeah, I think, and then I get the 4 variant. We just flex. Before I know this example, I thought flex is just you can drop it and that's it. But after I know about flex basis, it suddenly seemed to be a lot more powerful than I thought. So if you don't use it, then can come and try. First thing. So responsive to the content, I think that's pretty simple. Flag wrap and basis. There's a lot of things to talk about. Big topic, but I just picked the one that I feel quite interesting. So next up, to the viewport. Very common, huh? So here, responsive to the viewport is essentially I just tag the one. I just circle the one with the header. It's not the grid. So don't look into the grid, just the header. Because the header is something seem to be responsive based on the device size, right? It's not the grid. The grid could be something else. So we are talking about when the logo and there's a header and then it's collapsing into a one hamburger button like that. And we still use media query to do this. Most of the time we do it by width, but there's a lot of use cases. We do it by height as well. When you say, okay, the nav bar is going to be sticky, but when the height is too small, but when the height is too small, then you just don't allow this sticky to happen anymore. So you have more space, right? You don't need to use it a lot, but I saw it. I saw a lot of websites doing this, but they just didn't query about it. Hey, and then the sticky thing is there all the time. Quite bad. So back to the old day. We use media query also for the grid, right? See this is I think I take from Bootstrap online. So the idea somewhere started with the grid system has to be like 12 columns. And then if you wanted to have 2 columns in one row, you do a call MD6. And then you want to have 3 columns in a row, you do call MD4. So yeah, this one you now talk about it's kind of awkward because you don't use it, but if you write it every day, then it's just become a second nature, I think. So the code to make it work is pretty simple, right? You put a bucket class. The row is flagged for sure. Then there's a flag graph, and the code just set the width of the column itself. So pretty simple. You wanted to extend it a little bit. So like colon XS and colon MD is like, so we still have SM6. Sorry. Hope you can still see it. SM6 still with 50%. Then MD4 we target it in a specific screen size when it's a bit bigger, and then we set it like 1/3 of the screen, and then 3 is like 25, like 1/4 of the screen. So then you have a different number of column render in a row on the different screen sizes. So what about now? So now we have something called grid. So that is the card grid, and essentially to render a grid, it just say display grid. Yeah, pretty simple. Gap. So when you do a grid, nothing happens. So it's not like flex. You do display flex, everything suddenly become in one line. It's not a column. But when you apply display grid, nothing happens until you apply something you call. Is it working, this technology? Something you call grid template column, right? You do a repeat. I wanted to have 2 columns. 1F5 is the fragment unit dynamic. It's gonna take up the available space, essentially speaking. So in this case, you see there's 2 columns. You wanted to see more columns. What do you do? Repeat 3. Yeah, repeat 2 and repeat 3. Pretty simple. But if I have a big screen and I wanted to do a 4 column, then you know what I wanted to talk about. To do, is it gonna work? Okay, I just wanted to show that's how it works. So with display grid and with repeat, that is kind of working as we want. You shrink, you grow, it's just render the column. That's what we want. But then if I wanted to display more, I just need to get more. Right. When the screen is bigger, I want to repeat more column. Bigger, a little bit more. And because I have a huge screen at home, I do it over and over. But you don't have to do that, right? If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm heading to. So all of this, that's kind of working, but there's a catch, because when you are targeting using the media screen, when there is the container, not content, the grid is changing, nothing is gonna change because we are targeting using the media screen. So you are on the desktop and you open it to have a screen, and then you shrink using a like resizable navigation. It's very common today. Nothing happens. It's always 3 because it's targeting using media screen sizes. So in grid, they have something cool. I think most of you know that. If you don't know that, it's fine. So we replace this thing 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. With just a single column, right? Like grid template column. Repeat. You can put auto fit or auto fill, and then you put a minimum number that you want your item to look like. So if 200 is the minimum, and just put 200. If it can be lower, then put 150 or something. And so when the grid can accumulate more items, it will just do it for you. So you don't have to specify the number of items you wanted to render. So it's pretty helpful. Anyone doesn't know it? Okay. The guy do AI today. He doesn't know. That's fine. Awesome. So most of you, I assume that you know. I think it's pretty interesting trick that some of developer when I talk with they don't know. So I call it RAM for short. Repeat, auto fit, and min max. Quite useful. So there's two use cases, right? There's auto fit and auto fill. Think about auto fill is like when you have 4 items and then the content can accumulate 5 items. This always random 4 items. But you only have 4 items. Then the container can render 5 items. Then the 4 items is gonna be sketchy to fit this available space. So I think the next one is gonna be easier. The first one is auto fill. So 200, 200, 200. There's more, but they don't do anything. This side empty. But the below, as you can see, it's bigger. It try to fit the available space. So the auto fit is quite dangerous. Let's say you have this 1,000 pixel wide, and then you have only one element. That's gonna be crazy. But yeah, that's what I want to talk about the auto fit and auto pin, and it's work because now not only when the screen size changing that is work, but when as long as the grid container is changing, then it still work. So I resize the screen is work, but then I hope I do this in this. Do I? Okay, I think in the next one. Do I? Sorry, I just sampled the slide last night, so maybe something doesn't work. But it's like when you change the navigation, it is also updating the number of the grid item is going to be random. That's important to take away. Oh, I think that's one. Yeah, that's the one. That's one. I think I need to put them closer together. So yeah, now when I change the sign up, the grid also responsive to it, right? So that's what we want. So yeah, the key takeaway is like to do a grid nowadays, you don't have to do screen size like media min max anymore. Just do a repeat, auto fit, auto fill, and display grid. That's interesting. And then next one, let's see. Responsive to the container. That is new, right? All of that we talked about just now was like up to the CS grid. Responsive to container is something completely new. That 2023 is kind of stable. But before I talk about responsive to container, I wanted to mention that if you use Bootstrap before, you never has anything like a gap property, like in Git, grid, or in Flex. It is like you always need to render the grid over a for loop, and then we always do a margin dry, and then for some reason, for the last item, you don't want the margin anymore, and then you need to set some special thing. It's just bad, right? Gap makes it so much simple. It always exists between elements, not at the end, right? So it's so simple now. Responsive to container. So now I think the idea of responsive to container is like when the grid is big and it can render multiple items. You want this to have something like that. The image and then some text below. We call it a vertical. But when the screen size is a bit bigger and then we shifted from a grid 3 item to just 1 item on mobile, we might not want the same kind of layout because the card now becomes too big. So we want to shift it from the image now is on the left and then the text box is going to be on the other side. So it's like a horizontal kind of layout. How do we do it? Like if you use media query, it can still work, but then there's something called container query, pretty new. So I think we started 2017. 2021 is like there's a spec of containment module, not container. Containment module is like the underlying technical to make the container query happen. And then in 2023 is on Valentine's Day. For some reason, Firefox is making it stable on Firefox, making like own for browsers like supporting container query. So it has been like a few months, half a year now. Yeah. So now you can use container query on The last is browser version. So, it's my M again, using Angular. Oh. That's why he's laughing. So I think because it's just an open source project, I think it's too small now. Sorry. But the idea is like, when I built it, I was not very focused on responsive issue. So I just built it for fun, right? So there's some guy saying, guys, the button doesn't look good. You might not see it very clear, but it's just a few buttons next to each other. And then when the screen is too small, it just breaks down to a line which overlapping. But what is catching my eye is not this thing. I fixed the button eventually. But what catching my eye is the one I just mentioned to you. The card is too big. It's like you can see only one card. That's it. Doesn't work. So yeah, because I'm the responsible engineer, so I try to fix it. How I render the card, still the same. Template, column, right? No media query at all on the project itself. So it's just using grid and then template column, pretty simple. And so it's how it's rendered. Normally, when you have enough space. When you don't have enough space, up like 792 pixels, it still can render 2 columns. You go down 1 pixel because we do it like grid, repeat 200 pixel minimum. So it cannot go below 200, never. So I just go down 1 pixel, that is like 1 column kind of thing. And so it looked too big, I think. So I just try to fix it. So that's how I render the card. As you can see, it's flat. Quite difficult to imagine, but like just there's a card inside the cover, and it's just a flat and flat column. So it's rendered as a column, right? And so when I wanted to fix it, I just say, okay, I want the card to be flat direction row, and then I set the size for the cover. And it works pretty simple. 3 lap go. Cannot be simpler. It's just like medium mark width, 791, because 792 is where it look nice. 791 is where it doesn't look nice. So that's how I do targeting using a media query. And so, okay, doesn't really work. The reason is pretty simple. Because when I say in these sizes, you need to be in the layout. So it doesn't really matter like if the grid is gonna change or not, I will still in the same layout. So if now I shrink my navigation to be a bit smaller, and then grid container, it do the job to render 2 columns. But then the layout keep the same because I am in the same screen sizes. Because the screen size doesn't change, so nothing changes. The grid still do a very good job on rendering the number of items that we want, but the card doesn't do what we want. What we really want is that the card only has a row layout when it's the width, the card width is reaching just a certain width. It's not depends on the media. So that's what serious container query is gonna help us. So pretty okay. Before I go into sales like container, do you like struggle when you write this kind of thing? Media max with a number, because I always struggle because my mind just doesn't really like reconcile. Like mark width, is it a smaller or bigger? I don't know. And then mark width and min width is like it's include, right? So when you mark width of 100 and 2090 is included 190. So now we have something called range query. Awesome. It's your mathematical sign. So you just use it. Pretty simple. And it can do like less than or equal to. So less than is now is less than. No inclusive. Crazy. Anyway, go to the next one. So the media stuff now, it's suddenly changed to a container. I hope you should see the change. I see the effect style. I use PowerPoint. Oh, we need to use PowerPoint to make slides. So this media, and I just do the next one. The container. So the syntax is quite simple, like similar, right? It just, okay, maybe it's too small. It just instead of add media is now add container, and then you can specify the width. But then you need to define something we call it container. What is a container? So for me, it's like the card is a container itself. For some people, could be a grid is a container. So you need to specify the container somewhere. So that's why I add a new div on top of everything. Then I should put a container. I don't think we have enough time, but let's just go to next slide. Then in 4 minutes. So back to the syntax, it look quite similar, really. But container is really like just when the container size is changing, then I do something. It is not really depends on the device size anymore. It's just as long as maybe I change the navigation, or I think the most useful use case I show you later. Okay. This part I think I just fast forward. It's just too long. So it's just container type, container name, and container. So you need to specify somehow. Right. Just need to specify container on the parent. And then inline size, I just give it because I don't think I have time. And normal is not interesting because it is a default value. It is gonna be to support something they call it style query in the future. We essentially say you can query the variable value and you do something on the CSS. Why someone want to do it? Because we just wanted to has an equivalent way of doing things in CSS rather than doing things in JavaScript, because JavaScript sometimes is expensive. I think that's the idea. And then that to support something container style query is not yet there, but you can prepare for it in the future. And then when you specify the container, then just do an add container to query for it. Use the nice syntax. And it also come with something like called a container unit, right? Like CQ is container query, and then W is like width. CQ is like height. So you can do something with a clamp. For example, clamp is something like the minimum can it be like 60, the maximum is 32. But then if it's more than 16, then just takes 8 container query width. So it never becoming too big, never becoming too small. And it can like the font size also can be grow with your design. So if you do container query cat very well, it can end up like that. So it's just the same component using CSS alone. Really, just CSS. Four variant. Right. The normal one, the horizontal one, and the one when the screen is really huge. And you only has the cover. It looks nice, just like it. Yeah, we don't have time to show it on my app, but it's using Angular. So if we can use Angular to build something cool, and React and build this for sure. There's a lot of space, huh? So I think the benefit of container query is sometimes boiled down into this use case where you see I use the same arc in the same screen. There's no special JavaScript to tell, oh, this one on the right needs to be horizontal. It just automatically render based on the available space. So I think there's a lot of use case you can think of. There's a newsletter component. You open the page, it's showing up. You go down, it's showing on the footer. Sometimes it shows on the model. It's so just on the model pop-up. And for some, you usually have to build a different variant for different component. But now for like, if you can apply container query, then it might be just a single component. And then when you use it, it's gonna fit itself to render what you want. I think that's the biggest benefit of container query. And especially true when we start to build a component-based design system component and all this stuff with Angular. There's a lot of use case you can see, like the card, the article, newsletters, presentation as well. Pretty cool, like presentation on the mobile, on the smaller screen, you're gonna see more numbers, things like that. See from this guy, it's a hit. I learned a lot from him. And browser compatibility, yeah. Valentine's Day, But basically, you can only apply it when all of the user of your system has been upgraded the browser, and it never worked. And so what we recommend is like just take a polyfill. Take polyfill, and then if you wanted to try, then yeah, try it. But less likely you are gonna have it for all of the browser. No, all of your user. You might need to use some tool to check what is the percentage of Safari, for example. No? But I think it's not gonna happen maybe until the end of the year or something. Take away container type container. And I think I was over time by 2 minutes. Eric, was Eric? All good? Sure. Okay, sure. How you still interested to listen for another 5 minutes? But the last one is pretty quick. I think it's just about responsive to user preference, where we don't really care too much. But basically, yeah, line and the dark theme. Most of all, we don't care. I mean, my blog, I don't really put the dark theme, but I know that when I read my blog at night, or I try to put some blog at night, it just doesn't work. So responsive to user preference is like, okay, when your user is saying, guys, I want the dark theme, and so respect it a bit, right? Support it, because we use it via media. So media now can query a lot, just not a media mark width and mean width anymore. You can use media query to query a lot of stuff. So if the guy say, I want dark theme, then if you have bandwidth, then slot it. I think that's going to be helpful. Then yeah, like Facebook, they do quite well, right? You change it, it's automatically update. Yeah. But our blog, I think usually not. There's a lot more, right? There's a prefer reduce motion. There's some people who feel sick when they see kind of animation. Even for us, it feels like cool, right? To click a button, thing fall out from somewhere. But for some people, they don't like to see animation. So if they place all of these things, that we can do one part was like query it and then do something about it. If you can. That's basically user preference. We respect the user choice on seeing the website, because the option is there. Whether we wanted to support it or not is our decision. But it depends on the product team and the designer team. So we come all the way along from 91. We just start with HTML only in cap. I know it's only in cap because I saw the book written from that time. Body has to be body, not the small body that you see. Has to be cap for some reason. And then we had the time where we say, okay, now I put HTML and CSS, break it down. Separation of concern. And then in 2021, it's like we had even Photoshop on the web, which means that the web come a long way. You never really thought like we can have something so sophisticated like Photoshop on the web, at least for me. So we are here in 2023, and I think it's really exciting, right? I've been to Table, I've been to Float, I've been to some freelance project to convert Float into div, convert thing into responsive. So I know it's interesting because now we have such a lot of stuff. You see that there's so many stuff has been pushing on the CSS scene, just like JavaScript framework over the past few years. So I think view transition is interesting. I'm not sure you've seen it. Really cool. Container query, I just say. Logical probably has is cool as well. Clam is nice. Nesting, something we want from SCLS is also come to CSS. So there's a lot of cool things we can do now. And when I think of it, like there's this kind of thing where it's like the content is the one inside. And then outside content start to, if you cannot rely on content anymore, then do something with the container itself. And then the media is outside of it from the container. And the last one, if you have time, do some research and user preference with media query. So it's just boiled down into add media, add container, some flex, repeat, autofit, autofill. And yeah, I think that's all. Thanks, guys. Hope you learned something. That's a slide. There's a QR code to get the slide and a lot of article. or you can go to the link /talk.js23. Any question? Almost forget.
Is the container query supported by Tailwind?
Yes, there is a plugin on Tailwind. Yeah. So it's just like you put a container, just a container really, and then inside you just say containers. And because container can also come with a name, so you can say, okay, I want the container like car, for example. So you don't have to be over implicit because sometimes container can be very on top, right? So it's supported. I tried it before.
It's funny, that's the first thing I Google when I see container query. 3.2, by the way. Tailwind 3.2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does container query, or rather, like, the statement support polyfills by default? I didn't.
So not sure. So it's like when you get the so on Tailwind you need to add a plugin or something, and then this also come with the polyfill for sure. And then actually I think maybe the polyfill doesn't come by default. So Tailwind is just like, okay, now you can use Tailwind to do a container query, but then to be able to support it, you might still need to include the polyfill. Yep. Yep. I think what Tailwind plugin do is like just allow you to do the same thing on CLS, but whether the browser support it, you still need to make sure. Yeah. Actually, can we do a selfie? I think I do it a lot in the conference. I mean, that's the whole point of going to Thank you, bye.
Okay, one more question. So someone asked about the difference between mobile first and desktop first design. I know it's been a thing for many years. So what's your thought on it?
Yeah, I think so. Like mobile first is we using something like, okay, so you write a code for the mobile, and then you say, okay, when the screen size is bit bigger, when the min width is something like 500, which means it's going to be an iPad. The min width is like 1024, it's going to be a laptop or something, do something else. So the desktop first is like, okay, now I write code for desktop, and then when the screen size is maximum of 500, this is going to be maybe a phone. Maximum of 700 is going to be an iPad or something. So it's just the way you write code. Initially, they said you do mobile first seems to be better because when the user comes from mobile and when the data is expensive and the phone is kind of slow, they don't have to pass additional CLS for desktop. But my take on it is like now we have iPhone 14, and then the data is like 100 gig a month. The important to choose between mobile first and desktop first is not about like passing a bit of CLS code. I guess it's about if you design something like Photoshop for the web, I would say it is gonna take really long until the mobile web can use it. So if the majority of the user that we are targeting is using laptop to use our web app, like the generative field, I'm not sure if it's supported on mobile, but if like let's say 70% is using desktop, then maybe we can do just desktop first. Yeah. Or possible you can just use some techniques that doesn't require video query, but you still need some time. Hope it answered the question. Yeah.
Any more questions for Cho? Okay, great. Then we can wrap up then. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, thank you everyone again. Hope you have a good time. Feel free to stay back a bit to mingle with your friends and ask Chung and ask SK more questions about AI and responsive web design. Yeah, hope you have a good night. Just one small note that the aircon is off by 9 p.m. So, I mean, you can stay, but when it's hot, like it's kind of, it's not very fun to stay. So, yeah, cheers.